Okay, this is part two of the French Revolution. So what happens is when the Third Estate takes the tennis court oath, this is all in the chapter, they promise that they will not be disbanded until France has a constitution. Now, what happens after the storming of the Bastille, which again is mentioned in the chapter, the Third Estate begins to call itself the National Assembly, and eventually the king, Louis XVI, will tell the First Estate and the Second Estate to start meeting with the Third Estate. And so that becomes the National Assembly, and then they take the French Revolution into its probably most productive stage, the moderate stage, or the moderate phase. And we're going to talk about four things that they accomplish. So first of all, they inherit this social system that we learned about in the first mini lecture with the First, Second, and Third Estates, the three estate system. So first thing they do is this: the Third Estate system is abolished. So now, instead of people being in the First, Second, or Third Estate, we're just all French citizens. So what they're doing here is taking that revolutionary slogan of equality, liberty, equality, and fraternity, and they're trying to implement the equality part of that phrase. So considering the situation they were in, this is the logical thing for them to do first, is to get rid of the three estate system. Now, the next thing they do is produce the most important document of the French Revolution. It's the Declaration of the Rights of Man. So here are some of the things that the Declaration does. It provides a list of human rights. So the idea behind a written constitution is that it will delineate exactly what rights human beings have, and then establish a government that has limited powers but has the ability to protect these basic human rights. So one example here would be something like freedom of speech. And that is what we find in the American Bill of Rights. Okay? So here's a second thing it accomplishes. It defines the law as the expression of the general will. So all societies in the past have had to refer to something as the basis for the law. What is right or wrong? How do we know? And in the West, since we're so heavily influenced by the Judeo-Christian tradition, we've referred to things like the Ten Commandments and the ethics of Jesus, that type of thing. And then we've implemented those principles into our law code. Now, consider the context that these people are in, these moderates. They don't want to have to go back and rely on tradition and established authority. They want to be able to construct a society without reference to those things. So how are they going to know what's right or wrong? Well, the law is going to be, in a sense, whatever the majority of the people say, or as Rousseau mentioned, and this is something from the end of the chapter 19 study guide, sometimes a small group of people will claim that they understand what the larger society needs and that they have determined what is the general will. So that's how they define what the law is. So here's another important feature of the Declaration of the Rights of Man. It sets up religious liberty. Now, this moderate phase of the revolution is discussed in questions like 10 and 11 on the chapter study guide for 22, so make sure you go back and you'll see a discussion of these 4 things and help you review for test number 3. So remember, these people inherited a situation in which the Roman Catholic Church has a monopoly on worship and education for the most part, and now they're living in a modern nation state. They understand that you can't compel everyone to believe the same thing about religion, so they announced in the Declaration of the Rights of Man that from now on there will be religious liberty in France, and that's going to be something very difficult to implement. So, the Declaration of the Rights of Man is an attempt to construct a society on the basis of human rights and for our purposes we're going to use here the word reason to connect it to the Enlightenment. So this is what they were trying to do. They were trying to put together a document that would propel them into the future, and rather than relying on the past or relying on tradition and religion to inform what their society would be like, they were going to go down this route. Attempt to construct a society on the basis of human rights and reason. Now, we're going to stop there, and I'll do another mini lecture that will cover the 3rd and 4th things which the moderates do during the revolution.